it is very true that, you don't become an entrepreneur until you lose.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Merchant Sales Podcast. My name is James Shepard, your host today. Thank you for joining me. I've got a really intriguing interview for you that I think you're just going to enjoy today. Not a real deep payments interview or an expert interview today. Instead, we've got Vlad Sadovskiy, the CEO of Netevia, who is the sponsor of the podcast, and he's joined by his daughter, Emma. And we are talking about entrepreneurship in payments. And so it's a really broad conversation talking about a lot of the issues that we all deal with as we're trying to grow and scale our business while at the same time balancing family obligation and trying to raise our kids and all of those crazy things that we all have going on in our lives. And so I found this just a really fascinating interview. I think it's a great insight into Vlad and his family and kind of how he's operated and built a very large organization. But also there was just a lot of practical insights and tips, not only from Vlad, but also from Emma, talking about what entrepreneurship looks like today and what it might look like in the future. Then after that, we have an insider's report by Patti Murphy. And so she's going to be talking to us about bank-to-bank payments. Really, really interesting topic and some of the challenges around that. So we're going to dive into this episode. Obviously, Vlad is the CEO of Netevia. Netevia is the sponsor of the podcast. And we actually have some really cool things coming up in the next few episodes. You're going to start to learn more about Netevia, some additional announcements where Vlad's going to be joining me. We're going to have others join from the Netevia organization. So got some exciting things there to really add value, in that way as well. But if you do want to learn more about Netevia, you can head over to netevia.com and check out everything that they have to offer. So with that being said, let's dive into this very interesting interview with Vlad Sadovskiy and his daughter, Emma. Hey everybody, James Shepard here. I got a really exciting, unusual podcast episode for you today. I've never interviewed a father-daughter pair here on the podcast, but today I've got my good friend Vlad Sadovskiy and his daughter Emma, and we're going to talk about entrepreneurship in the payments industry. And so, Vlad, I thought it'd be great if you could kick us off by just kind of introducing your daughter, and then Emma, you can tell us a little bit of your story and kind of why you're so passionate about business and entrepreneurship.
Well, James, thanks for having me again here. And it's always great to be on your podcast. You have a lot of insightful information, as always, and we try to be a good supporter on a company level. But today, I guess it's a special episode for me as well. Recently, we've done my first episode with Emma, and it was audio. So this is technically the first video and audio episode with
Nice.
me and Emma. And I guess I'm the one to blame to raise somebody like that in the family. She's definitely taken an unusual career paths early in life. She's 15 and already a college student, which was a very interesting journey as to how we arrived to that. But I think it's working out to be great. We made that decision last spring as a family, and nowadays she's a full-time student and starting to work on her own projects within the TV family and a few other companies that are related to my personal investments. So without further ado, Emma Sadowski.
So, hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I like talking about a lot of different things, so this is really fun. There's a lot. I really like business and entrepreneurship in general because it's really unique and you can really start whatever you want to start. You can go into payments, finance, food, art, really whatever you want to do. And it's really cool because there's a lot of people who don't want that typical 9 to 5, and there's people who are great at it. There's people that's dream jobs, medicine, law, firefighters, police, really whatever. But there's a lot of people who don't want to do that and they want to start their own thing and they want to be passionate about what they do. So that's why entrepreneurship is such a great idea, because you could do whatever you really want to do and it helps to grow the job market as well, and it helps to grow different industries, which is really cool and important.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm Vlad and I both share this passion for business as well. And so it's really cool seeing a 15-year-old that's already jumping in and getting excited about it. So
The Shark Tank, I can tell you that much. We've been watching Shark Tank since 7 years old.
That's great. I love it. Yeah, Shark Tank, I think, has done a lot in our country actually to really promote entrepreneurism because kids see it. It's awesome, right? So Vlad, give us a little bit of a context here of what is it like to be an entrepreneur in the payments industry? What does that even mean today? And really more importantly, how do you parent and, have a family? I think everybody kind of knows you, Vlad. You have a bit of a reputation as a hard charger, somebody who's like working a lot and like really passionate about their business. How do you do that while also raising an amazing daughter here like Emma?
Well, you have to do it as a family, so I wouldn't be able to do it without my wife. That's for sure. I'm very fortunate. I've been married for over 20 years, and it definitely is a teamwork. In some cases, I come in and she is the CEO of the house. So I have a supporting role in that scenario. But when I was growing up, my job as a parent become more of a CVO, as I call it, Chief Vision Officer. And Chief Friend Officer, because the mother is hardcore. Emma do this, Emma do that, and
Right.
the dad is full of ideas and entertainments, and it's not a new thing, and that father daughter combination is always more powerful in the very beginning, and
Yeah.
uh, then they go back to becoming at some point mothers and wives, and it kind of shifts towards the women's side of the house. But this is right now my time, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think it's like interesting seeing like these different kind of definitions of success and seeing the different ways that people structure this. My wife and I, both are kind of very type A driven. She's a teacher, but she's like super passionate about it. So balancing all that out's been super interesting. Emma, I'm really curious to hear from your perspective, like growing up in a house with Vlad, just for one thing, right? But growing up in a house with an entrepreneur, right? And hearing all of that and seeing all of that, what are some of the pros and cons in your mind of kind of growing up that way with an entrepreneur in the house that's passionate about their work?
Well, I'm kind of like a female mini version of him. I kind of want to do a lot, and I kind of do a lot. So my mom's like, "Emma, do this. Emma, do this. Emma, you need to do this." So, and it's also like in the family that like everyone needs to study. You need to do your work,
Of
and
course.
it's like important. So there's a lot of like structure happening. So there's that because like I see him because like when I was little, he came home late, and that kind of became normal. So that's fine. I don't really care. So I come home, do whatever I need to just sit in my room, do all my work. So it kind of like reflects on that idea. So and
Yeah.
like it's interesting because the cons are just like the fact that there's always a lot happening. But the
Yes.
pros, there's more pros than cons, so it's kind of a pro. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I think in our house, I think all of our kids would say the same thing that it's like there's just always a lot happening, which again can be good, can be bad sometimes. One of the other questions I had for you, Emma, as you're 15, you're getting into business and entrepreneurship. How do you think that entrepreneurship is changing in your generation versus your dad's generation? What are some of the things that you see happening now that maybe you're excited about or maybe you think are bad? Like, I don't know. What do you think about business today and entrepreneurship versus maybe your dad's generation?
Well, first of all, the idea that like you can start a lot earlier. Like there's a lot of
Mm.
different businesses that are run by younger people because there's just it's just that idea that you want to do so much and it's to do so much you have to start really young
Mm.
or so there's a lot of people right out of college, people in college, so it's kind of that idea that you can start earlier, which is different because it used to be, oh, you have to do all of this before you can do anything else, but now you can do things simultaneously, or you don't have to get an education, but most people do, and it's really good to be a well-rounded person, but you can do stuff that you want to do during that time as well. You're not totally constricted because everything, so it's more like balanced.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and yeah, I agree. There's a lot more. I think the perception of entrepreneurship has changed a lot too. I think, right? I think people look and say, "Oh, you're 15, you want to start a business? Awesome." Whereas maybe in Vlad and my generation, it was like, "You're 15, you want to start a business? You're crazy. Don't do that. Go, just
Go,
study."
go, go to college, get a job first. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, right? You have to have that backup plan, right? So I think it's a lot more acceptable now. Vlad, going back to you on this, one of the words that I've really come to kind of despise the way it's used a lot is the word balance. In business, I think there's To me, it's more about like you're very passionate and you have to be intentional. I like intentionality, but balance, I think sometimes gets a little bit misunderstood in terms of what that actually means. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I mean, you know, entrepreneurship and payments specifically, but building out businesses and then having this family. How did you kind of air quote here? I'm air quote for those that are listening. Balance all of this while staying passionate about both your business and your family.
It's not balanced at all. It's always tilted in some other way. It's just a matter of um, how much diversity would not diversity, like how much of the personal life you want to allocate within your time during the day, during the week, during the month, and can you unplug and plug in
Mhm.
to a completely new environment, and how fast you could do that and adapt. I think it's a job of itself. It's a job on its own, and I think the reality of it is people that can mix the two together at the end of the day get the most joy in life because they have something that they can look forward to in terms of professional experience, and then they have this family experience that as years go by might not come back. I mean, time is something that we
Yeah.
cannot buy. So you have to cherish it at the time when it's there, because it's not coming back.
Mm.
So, in my case, Emma's only, 15 once. She's not gonna be
Right.
15 next year. She was not 15 last year.
Right.
So if I
Yeah.
don't recognize that, just like it's like recognizing a business opportunity if you want to think about it that way. So if you're like all charge hard like me, entrepreneur, and you try to get a goal, well, this is one of the goals, and you can look at it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a determination that you have to make to, it's one channel of your life.
Mm.
You only have one life to live, as profound as it sounds, but
Yeah.
you have to at some point recognize if you're a true entrepreneur and not think that you're an entrepreneur, but you don't really um, create or make any money doing that, and you're just playing the game without really understanding what the result of it is going to be. um, then you're gonna have those family years pass you by, or you have your father-daughter years pass you by. But
Yeah.
if you are focused, this is just another focus. So I want to reach a certain goal financially within a certain quarter for the company. Well, then what type of goal do you want to reach for your family? It's part of your personal life. Otherwise, don't start a family, right? Be
Right.
a solopreneur.
Yeah, right. Vlad, you mentioned something a couple times that I want to dig into for a second. You keep talking about the idea of kind of your family and business, like doing things together, and you've talked about your kind of partnership with your wife. Like, give us a little more advice on that for those of us that, I have 4 kids and a wife. I mean, how is your family culture structured such that, you are able to put this much effort into business, but at the same time, your family, like bringing you guys together rather than kind of tearing you apart? Any other advice on that?
Well, for me, it started 20 years ago. I had a choice when I got married. My wife told me, look, I'm a pharmacist, and we're either going to open up pharmacies, or you're going to try to do something that you're going to be proud of, and I'll support you. So it started from the very beginning. My wife was my actually first financial investor in my first company in this business. And so
Wow.
um when it's a partnership at the end of the day. There's no ifs about it. I mean, yes, along the way you hit a lot of roadblocks, just like in any business. If you have a business partner, it's the same way.
Yeah.
Of course, you have love and compassion and everything else in between. And you like to travel together. You like to spend time together, away from kids from time to time. But it always comes back to you as a boomerang, right? That
Right.
the kids come to you and say, "Listen, you know what? You guys do whatever you got to do. We got our own
Right.
priorities in life now." So it will all come back. I mean, I'm sure that in the
Yeah.
next couple of years it will come back to me as well. Today, I'm happy to say, look, I'm glad that you're a teenager and you can stay home, so me and the mom can take a day off together. But
Yeah.
uh, I guess it's an understanding that um that you create in the very beginning of your relationship, and if it's the right life partner for you, then it will resolve itself in the very beginning. And if it's not, it'll just become a mushroom effect of negativity, and will lead probably to nowhere, because
Yeah.
you end up starting to lead two different lives, and it would separate people apart.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I would have to say that what you do, by the way, James, a few times I've heard you speak about it, is that you allocate time for your wife and kids, and then you allocate time for your business. And during those
Yep.
times, do not touch me, do not call me, do not talk to me about anything that's related to business. This is my personal time,
Right.
and you decide to spend that time
Yeah.
with your family. So
Yeah, I think, one of the things you said earlier too, I think a lot of people kind of will struggle with switching back and forth, which is something I struggle with. And so I think for some people you have to kind of reverse engineer yourself a little bit and figure out, like, am I a person who, for me, I like to go all in on stuff. So I'm like, for vacation, let's do like a whole week at a beach house unplugged. Like, I can do that. Like, that's good. And then work, I want to work. So and you got to figure out, what do you know, for me, I need a half hour on the way back home to like regroup and, okay, now I'm going home. So I think everybody has to kind of figure out themselves. Some people can switch back and forth a lot easier maybe than others. Emma, as we talk about entrepreneurship, I listened to a podcast, the first one that you did actually with your dad, and you talked a lot about passion in that podcast. And I'm a huge proponent of that, and it's so important to me. What does it mean to you to be passionate? Why is that so important when you're trying to be entrepreneurial or create something?
Well, first of all, it starts from like the idea like I can choose what I want to do. There's a lot of people who can't do that for different
Mm,
reasons. So like for example, like my mom and like my parents, they like came here into this country and they had nothing. So all they had to do, like my mom, she got an education, got the fastest education she can get to get money.
right.
But I can choose what I want to do. So it's important to really like choose wisely and kind of really think at what you like, because some people, like for me, for example, I want to be successful. I want to have a career. I like working. I like school. I like learning. So it's kind of you're kind of putting your whole like life into this. So why not do something that you like?
Yeah.
And if it happens not to fit into the 9 to 5 category, then you should go out and create it for yourself, because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, the things that you do are going to be the things that you remember about your life. So it's really important to really do what you want to do and not what other people tell you to do, especially when you have the opportunity to.
Mm. Yeah, that's really good. Um, Yeah, so you mentioned about the school a second ago. Let's dig into that a little bit more. So we gotta, like, because Vlad right off the bat's like, oh, she's 15, she's a college student, and everybody's head exploded. So, like, what in the world? So talk to us about school. Why did you choose this kind of very unconventional path, and what has that path been like for you?
Well, so it's not that complicated. At least I don't think it is. But so basically, Florida, you can we live in Florida, so it's not that hard. There's plenty of people that do it. So it's through this idea of called dual enrollment. So you get high school and college credits at the exact same time. So
Mm,
it's actually pretty popular. It's just certain people do it through their school and certain people do it in like a homeschool, but you actually don't stay home. So I don't stay home. I go to school. I go to college from 9:30 in the morning to 2:30 in the evening. So like at the afternoon, twice a week, which is really, really nice. And I take 6 classes. Like you could choose, but I choose what I want to take. I can choose the
right.
professor I want to take with, and you can kind of really. And at the end of it, I'm gonna have a high school diploma and an associate degree, and then transfer to whatever university I want to go to.
Mm. And why
So
did
it's
why did you I would imagine that that path that you've chosen is obviously, I would think, harder than, just like, hey, let me focus on getting my high school diploma first. So, like, why did you choose to do this instead of kind of the more standard, maybe easier approach?
she
I
was bored,
I was
James.
really bored. I don't love
She was really bored.
I like
I mean, I was bored with to school as well. So when I listened to the podcast, I was like, why did I not have this when I was a kid? I would have loved this. So
I felt so envy when I first heard about that kind of a plan. I felt so envy, because I remember my high school years, and the last 2 years was brutal. You
yeah.
know, I did not want to attend classes. I just wanted to pass and get my exam, and couldn't wait for the next chapter to start. So having an opportunity like that, if you have if you have an ability to pass your exams in high school sooner,
Yeah.
uh, because there's certain prerequisites to this whole process that Emma's describing. Although
Right.
it seems simple, you actually have to test out of math, high school math, before you get to that level.
Of
So you
course.
test out of high school math, then it gives you an opportunity to do this dual enrollment
Mm.
project. And so she did the work. She tested out of the math requirements, and then the dual enrollment kind of opened up the doors for her.
That's cool.
Yeah, I just
Go ahead.
don't. I didn't really like the whole 8 in the morning thing. I don't really like to wake up early, so it wasn't as cool. It's like it's just not my favorite classes. Like I like math.
Right.
I love math. I take a lot of math every year. I don't. So it was kind of like when they told me, "Oh, you have to take 6 Englishes," I was like, "Why do I need to take 6 Englishes if I'm not majoring in English?"
Right.
So in college, you could really just choose what you want to take.
Yeah.
So I take 2 maths. I take a history because it's government requirement, and then I take a bunch of other things but eventually I could take what I want to take.
Yeah.
So I can take computer science. I can take computer science. I can take statistics if I want to take statistics. There's requirements like I finished high school math. I tested out of a few classes. So there's things that you have to do, but at the same time, in the end, you could do what you want to do, especially if you already possess those skills.
Right.
So it's not, it's just something I wanted to do. Plus, there's people that I made friends, so you don't really lose any of like that social
Right.
aspect of it. So it just you kind of just speed everything up, but you do what you want to do, and it gives you the ability to A, not wake up early, B, not have to be mandated by every single class, and B, forced to attend every single class
Right.
because high school takes attendance.
Right.
College does not.
Right. Okay. Wow. So you just got to get the result, right? It's objective driven. You just want to get the result. Yeah. I can
Exactly.
I can see that entrepreneurial spirit where, I get it. So, by the way, I have to say it's so interesting, like Vlad, for those who aren't watching the video version, like it's so cool just watching your face as you're obviously so proud of your daughter. And so we have to dig into that a little bit. Like, how do you feel about, I know like, there's this obviously balance because you want to give your kids structure. They have passions that they want to pursue. How are you feeling about the decisions that Emma's made so far with kind of a little bit of an unconventional path here with school? But her pursuing her passion. Tell us a little bit about how you kind of feel about that, and maybe your advice to other parents that are trying to balance the structure and the like. Hey, go pursue your passion.
Well, I think it starts from being able to have a good relationship with your kid in the beginning of teenager years, right? I mean, Emma is a teenager today, and uh, every parent that's ever been having a teenager in the house, it's so hard to create a relationship with a teenager because they go through this growth stage, and it's a hit or miss. You either have a great relationship with your kids, or you completely alienate them because now they have their own decision making process, and they're not seeing eye to eye with you, or you don't get their passions. And in my case, what I try to do is I try to give my passions, or some of the passions, to Emma, and then see what she would do with that. And if she doesn't like it, we move on. If she likes it, it stays with her, but with her own interpretation to begin with, right?
Right.
Uh, and the other part of it is, I think that the most important thing that we arrived to at the end of, I would say, 2 years ago, is the fact that what Emma mentioned earlier, there's a ton of videos that teenagers watch, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, that says one thing: get your first million by the time you're 20. You could be the influencer, you could be this, and you could be that. You're no longer selling, lemonade on the corner in order to make money.
Right.
So um, the reality of that is that just shows you the speed of how far and how fast teenagers want to be integrated into society and be able to start making their own money. And unfortunately, with our country, on average, not being very successful in keeping the average class, it's really a desire for the teenagers to really get into the groove of making money earlier, than so that they don't have to struggle later.
Mm.
And so it's under that type of pressure, financial pressure, and sometimes parents cannot afford to give them this financial freedom to choose or do things, that they're trying to get out and make their passions a or make their time be paid for, even if it's a TikTok or an Instagram.
Right.
And so my real relationship when it comes to what Emma wants type of questions started with the fact that she started to get bored at school, and
Right.
you in our legal system you can't take the kid out of school on
Right.
your own at
Right.
will. So we start looking into solutions. So that was number one. Number two, um, the fact that what can be done about spending her time where her mind is, really accepting new information at a phenomenal speed today. Like this information, you, James, and I we would never be able to comprehend at the speed that
Yeah. I've already
uh,
noticed this. Yeah.
she has. Like, AI is the bestie for Emma, a
Right.
foreigner to me.
Yeah, we're
Uh,
besties.
No, that's fun.
and so just those type of things, you want to be able to cherish that and multiply that right now, because if you're not multiplying that right now, tomorrow it's going to be harder, because the difference of in a couple of year difference in age in terms of comprehending the information that's right now available,
Yeah.
it's such a big deal at this point.
Mm.
And it's such a competitive situation and such a big deal. If you look at sport, uh, it's getting younger. Figure skating is 13-year-old
Right.
girls' sport these days.
Right.
By the time you're 20, you're probably done
Right.
in professional figure skating.
Right.
Not to mention some other disciplines like gymnastics and a few other things. I don't know if you were watching Olympics, but it's
Yeah.
amazing how young those
Yeah, it
athletes.
is. Yeah.
So if you don't realize it, you're just completely missing what's going on in the world and
Right.
in this country specifically. And so if you want to prepare your kid for the next generation, whether it's entrepreneur or somebody that wants to be integrated in the workforce or some professional expertise, yes, they don't know where they want to go in life yet.
Right.
What you can do is give them the opportunity to make their mistakes sooner rather than later, while you can still help them navigate some of these mistakes, because they're not going to be that big and they're not going to be that life changing, and they have time to if they fall, start over and do it again.
Yeah. I'd love to get your reaction to some of that. I mean, do you see, it seems like you do well with kind of that pressure of like, okay, yeah, I want to excel. I want to do really well. I would imagine probably some of your friends, maybe not as much. They're maybe not as much into that. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to make $1 million by the time I'm 20. Maybe they are. How do you feel about that? And how does that maybe impact you and your friends? Do they see that pressure in a good way as well? Or like, what are your thoughts on that?
I have different friends. I have a lot of friends that are really into school. So we have a lot of I have a lot of friends that I would used to go to sports with, or I went to school when I was little. So, but everyone's kind of just chill about everything. Everyone just kind of lets everyone do their own thing. But we have really a lot of really common interests. So no one really cares, in my opinion. You do what you want to do. So I
Yeah.
have a lot of friends that are into the various subjects. I have a friend that wants to go into internal surgery. I have another friend who wants to be a teacher, and everyone just kind of lets
Right.
everyone do whatever they want to do, and everyone's supportive of each other. So my friends, if they do well like a sports competition, everyone's really supportive, and I bet they'll be really supportive of me, and they are. So I'm
Yeah.
really happy with that. I feel like I have really good friends.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't. No one
Yeah.
really pressures anyone else too much because they know they do their own pressuring. So
Right, right.
uh,
Well, I see that too, though, and because what's interesting to me is I feel like when I was 15, right, most of my friends wanted to do nothing, like with their life in general. Like, you know what I mean? At that point, it was like, oh, we're hanging out, we're into it. But it's like it does feel like maybe today a lot of the 14, 15, 16-year-olds that I'm a youth pastor as well. So I talk to a lot of teenagers, and I feel like there is a little more of that. Like, yeah, I want to accomplish something with my life. Like I'm going to do something. I don't know what it is yet, maybe, but like I'm doing something. I'm trying to accomplish something. And I think maybe does that come more from, hey, I'm seeing social media, I'm seeing what other people are doing, and I want to accomplish something as well. Or what do you think about it? Do you feel like that's something that's like your generation is like a little bit more driven? You want to accomplish things earlier?
Yeah, also because like the idea of social media, like you know what's out there and you know what
Mm,
you can do. So there's a
right.
lot of exposure for certain things that aren't as popular.
Yeah.
So the idea, there's a lot of people that are really into like filmmaking. Before, your only option for filmmaking was to be a producer or to be part of like commercials. Now you can do filmmaking in YouTube videos, TikToks, you can do whatever you want. But it's still that same area, and people get respected for that
Mm,
because there's a following, they make money, so why not respect them? They worked for it. So it's kind of that idea that there's a lot of exposure and there's more opportunities in just as many professions. So if you want
yeah.
to be a photographer, you can be a photographer in travel, wedding, sports, whatever you want to do. So there's a lot of more variation in the different industries right now due to the fact that there's social media. So there's
Mm,
kids and teenagers know what's out there, so it makes them more driven and more
sure.
kind of goal oriented in a way.
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. That's really good. I love it. So, Vlad, I've got one last question for you to kind of wrap this up, and this has been super interesting. This dynamic. One of the things that I see younger entrepreneurs really struggling with is the definition of successful entrepreneurship, which in my mind is that you make money. That's kind of like an obvious one to me, but I'm a little old fashioned. But I see a lot of people struggle a little bit with like it's about having the best idea. And so lots of great ideas. I hear great ideas all day, every day, but there's a problem where there's maybe not that execution. And so we're not actually like accomplishing anything, but we have great ideas. What is your thought as you're speaking to entrepreneurs in our industry and even young entrepreneurs like Emma who are just getting started? What is that balance between, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm creative, I'm excited, I have a great idea, but then you actually have to operate and get something done. Give us some advice on innovation and entrepreneurship in that way.
So I think first of all, again, it goes back to how old you are, right? If you
Mm,
start early and you want to give a go to a few ideas of your own and you fail at them,
yeah,
that's okay.
right.
I think that the more of these mistakes you make on the early stages of your life, the better you're going to be down the road. If you don't feel the bittery of losing, you're not going to know how the success feels like.
Yeah.
So I think that it is very true that you don't become an entrepreneur until you lose.
Mm, wow, that's a great
So
statement. I like that.
understanding that you have to lose in order to become a true entrepreneur, try to do that as early as possible, right?
Yeah.
So that starts with the fact that if you start early, you have that time and you have that opportunity, and you can try, which is what I'm actually trying to coach Emma on. That if you do it earlier, you just bought yourself more time, right?
Right.
You have to go through the routine of high school and college education, etc. But if you're in parallel to do some things that you want to try and not be afraid to fail, you will become a much stronger person, both business wise and personally. Um, you know, down the road in life. And it's very true for all these sports people, the people that are trying to do sports professionally, any sport, doesn't matter what it is, right? They have all these competitions and they have these failures. And then they have to overcome the failure in order to become a champion. So
Right.
they have that exposure. A lot of people that are not into competitive sports during that time, they don't have that exposure. So
Right.
you need to get it somewhere else.
Right.
And that somewhere else is, if it's business, then, or an idea, then try it, because you're gonna regret it for the rest of your life. I started, being in this business. I was afraid to do it. But my wife told me, look, if you don't try, you're gonna regret it for the rest of your
Right.
life. It's very true. Now, on the other hand, as you mature, um, that opportunity becomes less and less, not only appealing, but also stress-free. Because now you have a family, you have certain responsibilities in life in some cases, and you are in your late 30s. Now there, it's a completely, totally different dynamic. Case in point, I was interviewing for a job, two people, and I gave them a choice. They had competing job offers. We were competing for talent, and I gave them a choice: a little bit of a lower salary, but a responsibility of their P&L,
Mhm.
or a higher job that they have to take elsewhere.
Mm.
In the last 2 months, three people that I've talked to, two took the job, and the response was, I have to do this for the sake of my family and their well-being. And just so you understand, their well-being, we're talking about, executive levels of people being able to do this, $100,000 difference a year, right?
Right. Right.
So I like to look at that and say, when people ask me, well, Vlad, you have this company and you guys raise this money and you've always had great companies that you fast forwarded, and you're making so much money, and you're not doing any job that's different than what I'm doing. My response is always the same. I don't get paid to do my job. I get paid for taking risks to do my job.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference, in my opinion, between the entrepreneur that's always prepared and ready to take risks,
Yeah.
and a person that's trying to play safe and for various reasons. And sometimes those reasons are very valid. And in my mind, some of these reasons should not be valid if you want to follow your ideas. Now, with that said, I truly believe that if you are going about many ideas and you're not going to set on one, and you're at the later stage in your life, like in your mid to late 30s, I strongly suggest that you get organized. Because unfortunately for you, your time has passed. And if you are running a business, you need to find that formula based on your previous experience, maybe tweak it a little bit towards today's times, but follow it and give it all, because guess what? You don't have time to maneuver anymore. Unless you want to feel like a late founder, which is what I'm considered to be these days, and you want to do it closer to I would say not twilight of your career, but not in your 20s and not in your 30s.
Right. Right.
So that's the biggest difference, in my opinion, and that's where you need to get organized. So if you feel like you're in your 30s and you don't feel like, okay, I'm ready to take risks because my family requirements are such, and et
Right.
cetera, et cetera. Find one idea. Do
Yeah.
not try to go with 5. Do not try to go with 10.
Right.
Do not even try to go with 2. One
Right.
idea that you think is going to work. And if your answer is no, you don't know, then continue to do what you do, progress your career, be part of a good team, try to find a good team, but
Right.
don't risk entrepreneurship on yourself at that point.
Yeah, you got to look at the evidence. You got to look and see, like, what have I tried so far in life, and how has it turned out, right? Like, you got to be. I think there's like a realism, and I know that there's an allure to, like, entrepreneurship and all the money and all of that, but there's some pretty nasty trade-offs. And I think a lot of times, if you're not passionate, like Emma was talking about a little bit ago, if you don't have that passion for it, it's really, that's the thing. Vlad, for me, I don't know about you, but like, to me, it's like, if you don't love it and you're not passionate about it, it's just not worth it. It's really not. And people don't understand that because they see the money and they see all of that, but it's like, you don't see the stress and you don't see the trade-offs. You're literally going to battle every day. If you're not passionate about it and you don't love it, just get a job on a really great team. You'll be so much happier, But if you find something that you're like,
you might be a great addition for that team, so it will be a great match.
Exactly.
Right. So
yeah,
it's not going to be a win-lose. It's going to be a win-win.
absolutely.
And
like I said, there's different
I
definitions
think
of success,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. and
So.
succeed with I didn't succeed as good as you are in terms of making kids. So um
I don't think that's a
but you
definition of
seem to
success.
diversify much better. You seem to diversify much better than me.
Well, the definition of success, I think, comes a little later on, but yeah, that's great. I appreciate it. So awesome. Well, hey, Emma, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Vlad, of course, always a pleasure to have you. So it's really been a lot of fun talking to both of you today. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, James.
Well, I'm back here with my good friend Rich Norton. How you doing today, Rich?
I'm doing excellent. Beautiful day in Florida. Great to be on the call with you. Appreciate you very much.
Absolutely. It's great to have you back. So, we're talking today about solutions. And so, Rich, I know on the podcast, I talk a lot about kind of the futuristic direction I see the industry going, integrated payments and all that. But I think when we get out to the reality of Main Street merchants, right? Not every merchant wants a rocket ship to land on their counter. Some of them do want a terminal. Some of them want something else. So, talk a little about when you go into a merchant and you realize there's a level of interest. How do you start to get into this conversation around the right solution for that merchant from a kind of a hardware perspective?
Absolutely. So I think the important part is, and this is ironic, we were just talking about that on our Monday Zoom call. Every week we do that with our team, and we had 79 representatives on the
Wow,
call.
that's a lot.
And I'm going to say probably 50 of them were new. And you just see in the chat box all the comments that they're making. Great stuff. They're taking notes, and I'm
Right.
getting a lot of great feedback. And what I'm finding in a lot of the representatives that have joined our team, most of the training that they've gotten from other companies has basically been one call, just go out there and sling cash discount. Don't worry about anything else. Just convince them. And I
Right.
tell everybody, we're not in the convincing business. The cash discount, great program. It's evolved, and we'll do more shows on that too. I
Yeah.
think it's important, especially with all the new compliance laws, but it's not for everybody. And we
Right.
have to find out what's going to be the best solution for each merchant, that we're speaking with. And a lot of that just comes down to, and this is what we talked about, was just building a rapport. It's that part
Yeah.
of getting the people to like you, because if they like you, they're going to listen to you. And then you become a consultant, and then they're going to begin to trust you. So what do? It's very simple. The best salespeople are the ones that ask questions.
Mm.
And then when you ask the questions, we have to shut up and listen, because a lot of times when we're new, what ends up happening is like we're already thinking about the next part of the pitch. And
Right.
it's like whatever they said, it just flew by me. And it's like now I'm presenting something that they don't need. So when I go in, when I'm meeting people for the very first time, asking them a couple questions. What are you currently using right now? And I start out by saying, we've been helping a bunch of people that have this program, have that program. By the way, what are you guys currently using right now? Well, we have this company right here. Okay, then I'll shake my head up and down. That's great. As a matter of fact, the majority of the people that I'm helping out have that same exact program. And this is what we've been able to do to help them out. And then I'm going to get a little bit more information. By the way, are you absorbing all the fees? Or are you passing any of them back at all? And then listen to what they say, because a merchant might say to us, no, I'm not going to charge them no matter what. I don't care. I've heard
Right.
that. It ticks me off. We've all heard that. And then most of these sales reps are, what are you, an idiot? You don't want to save money? And it's like, come on, you're not going to write the merchant that way. So I tell everybody, agree with them.
Yeah.
Whatever they say, just say, I'm glad you brought that up. That goes to show that you're an intelligent business owner and you care about your customers. So my hat is off to you. So obviously for your type of business, you want to absorb the fees, but you want to do everything that you possibly can to save money. Am I correct with that? And then come back with another question. If there is something that you would like to see different in the way you're doing it right now, what are some areas that you would like to see improved? I know there's probably a bunch, but what would be number one and number two on your list right now? So by listening to that, then we're going to pivot into what's going to be the best program. They might say, well, I got this terminal right here. I'd like to have something that I can have inventory. I've been thinking to upgrade to the new Clover system or something like that. And then
Right.
whatever they say, I'm glad you brought that up, because the majority, the people I've been helping out, I'm hearing that every single day. So that's great. So now as we're finding out what their pain points are, now we're pivoting into what's going to be the best solution for them. as opposed to I'm just out here slinging cash discount all day long. If they don't, then I'm moving on to the next one. And
Right.
that's not sales. We're just cramming that down people's throats. Sure, there's a market for that, but we really want to know that we have an opportunity available for every merchant that we encounter. And I know that's a long answer to your question.
No, I love it, Rich. It's so great. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. For people kind of check back in the next week, we're going to dive into some other things about kind of these differences in the industry and some of that industry knowledge that I think, really the industry, if you just go out there, like you said, with this mindset of, I know what's right for the merchant, I'm going to sell everybody the same thing. You're going to turn out, you're going to try to win the argument instead of winning the sale, and you're not going to be as effective as you could be. So keep tuning in. Rich, always love your insights. Looking forward to next week.
Absolutely. Thank you.
James, we haven't talked a lot about bank-to-bank transactions. And a lot of reasons for that. Biggest reason being that it would, at least on the surface, seem to make card payments obsolete.
Sure.
But that's really not the case. In fact, in the interviews I've had with folks that are developing these solutions, they say it's going to become an important part of ISO and agents, overall offerings. Bank-to-bank payments, sometimes they're called account-to-account payments. They're coming to the U.S. market, and probably sooner than you think. The sticking point has been fraud, obviously. With credit cards,
right.
We have the issue of chargebacks. That's not going to work with bank-to-bank payments. So, developers have put a lot of time and energy and money into building fraud detection solutions. One company, Psionic, I'm not sure if we had them on our podcast or not.
Might have. I think it's been a while if we did, but yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. We ought to get them back once because they're going to be going live later this year. Q4, he tells me.
Okay.
Ron Herman is the guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ron plans to roll it out, a solution that uses an AI model that was built in part on the real-time payments experiences of an Indian solution. A solution that was built in India for their real-time payments network.
Okay.
Or instant payments. And he's also been working with Jack Henry, which of course is a company that provides a lot of back-end processing services to community banks and credit unions. But there were two things that really struck me just as I was prepping this report was Visa has its own version that will be rolled out in the UK next year and soon after here in the US. And in a press release, Visa stated that it will use tokenization and AI-based fraud technology to introduce bank-to-bank payments, primarily for bill payments. And that's where it's going to start, with things like subscriptions and bill payments.
Right.
But on a call with investment analysts earlier this year, Visa's chief product and strategy officer, a guy named Jack Forstell, explained that the move to bank payments is backed by its acquisition of Tink, which was a European company back in 2022. It had developed the necessary technology that allowed them to, make an entry into this market. He said that the transaction volume so far have been growing exponentially with Tink's existing markets. And he says Visa has been working behind the scenes to create the foundation for deploying it here. That includes bank connectivity and agreements with banks and processors to ensure quality authentication. In the press release I mentioned, Visa said its new service will provide advanced security features and, quote, easy to use dispute resolution service.
Okay.
Whatever that might mean. So now MasterCard's been working on bank-to-bank as well, but with JP Morgan, but it uses the ACH rails. Visa is planning on using its card rails for bank-to-bank.
Right.
So, and ACH is a whole different creature.
Yeah.
But they both leverage open banking capabilities. With open banking, the whole idea is for consumers to allow third parties like fintechs to securely take a deep dive into their account information. It's a step up from screen scraping, which we know has been has been the go-to method for years.
Right.
But here's the standards for open banking, for sharing financial data through APIs, are being developed by the industry, but they're also going to be regulated by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in the process of writing regulations right now. They put out a notice of advance notice of proposed rulemaking back in May. And the
Okay.
proposal was supposed to come out this fall for
Okay.
how do we regulate open banking and ensure the standards are sufficient and security is sufficient. It's also worth noting, and this is something that came out just as I was prepping for today's podcast. Walmart will soon be offering what it calls pay by bank using Fiserv's connection to RTP, which is the instant payment network that's run by the clearinghouse, which is owned by, I don't know, 7 or 8 or 9 of the largest banks in the country.
Oh.
And so they're going to be clearing and settling payments through RTP.
Huh.
I have a call into Fiserv. They said to me, this is only, we're only doing this right now with big merchants. It's not something we're going to roll out immediately to the ISO and agent market, but they didn't discount the possibility of rolling it out to the ISO and agent market.
And Patti, maybe, just zooming out a minute here for our audience to kind of understand the bank-to-bank side. I mean, when we talk about a bank-to-bank payment or bank-to-bank transfer, how is that different from a card payment? Are we talking about one consumer is like, thinking of more of like almost a Plaid experience where we're logging into our bank and authorizing a bank-to-bank transfer? Is there still interchange? Like, what can you tell us about? And again, I know this is all new, but like, what can you tell us about it?
Yeah.
Like,
well, it takes the consumer. This consumer does not have to go to the bank and authorize it.
Okay.
They can just say, they can sign up in advance to do bank-to-bank payments.
Okay.
Okay, they can sign up with their bank and say, yes, I authorize you to make these account-to-account transactions. And I go to James's Pizza Shop and I can, hand you my credit card, or you can say, you could have on your Clover terminal, it can say, card, cash, bank account.
Interesting.
And you hit,
so it could be,
account.
In a way, it could almost be a saved payment method with a merchant.
Exactly.
So there's still going to be that. And I think to clarify, and again, as I understand it, there is still a little bit of additional friction at the beginning of the process. In other words, it is a little harder to put that particular payment method on file than, for instance, a card payment with a, tap.
It's not as easy as having a card on file. Yeah.
Right. But I do, if I understand it correctly, it does eliminate, at least for now, there's not an interchange fee type of structure there. Right. And so I think for the card brands, I think a lot of times in our industry, people forget that Visa and MasterCard, their revenue is not about the interchange. Their revenue is about the network access brand usage fee, the dues and assessments, things of that nature. So these guys, ultimately Visa and MasterCard doesn't really care how money is transmitted as long as it goes through their network and they're getting a fee per transaction, per token, per whatever. And so I think these types of things are perfect for them. They even crypto to some extent, you've seen the plays that they made in that initially, Visa and MasterCard are fine with money being transmitted in other ways besides cards. They just want to make sure that they're getting a piece of the action.
Exactly. And, the idea, one of the things that, just to sort of go along with that, at one point, Visa was an ACH processor.
Right.
I mean, but I think, what you're going to see, where you're going to see the most of the activity in bank to bank, I think is going to be like bill pay solutions, subscriptions, those types of things where maybe it would be a card on file.
Right.
It might be replacing that. But there's going to be, there are going to be transaction fees. It's just, what people tell me is the transaction fees are going to be lower than interchange.
Right, sure. And, one of the other things interesting, Patti, as you're talking about all this, like, I'll make a little prediction here. I would predict that in 3 years, Plaid will be owned by either Visa or MasterCard, probably Visa. Because again, I think
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think their technology in a lot of ways is at least as trusted as Visa would be in what they do. In other words, people now are like
Right.
so used to logging into Plaid. Like, oh yeah, I want to give access to my bank account, I use Plaid. And I think as the technology grows, I think there's a lot of value to Visa in taking the Plaid brand and making
Right.
it a product of Visa to
Hmm.
expand the things like bank to bank,
Yeah,
transactions and kind
sure.
of give people that, wow, if this is Plaid, a Visa company, I think there's a lot of really interesting things there because if you think about it at its core, Plaid is about, connecting dots. It's a network effect. But it's
Right.
also about trust and it's about, maintaining the confidentiality of this data. So
Right.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
crossover, and I think it'll be really interesting to kind of see, where that goes. But to me, I see Visa making a lot of acquisitions where, sometimes I'll scratch my head a little bit, and you're like, okay, it almost feels like they
Hmm.
were just trying something out there. I don't know, but something like a Plaid to me is more of a natural extension of what they do, as far as, yeah, okay, this is a great way to dramatically increase the
Hmm.
scope of what is Visa, and it's like, well, they do a lot of other things. So I'll be interested to see if that transpires. But I just think there's a lot of opportunity
This,
along those lines with bank to bank. Bank to bank is a big deal for those that don't understand. It's a really big deal.
yeah, it's a really big deal, and I think we need to sort of keep our fingers on the pulse of that market because it
Right.
is going to have an impact
Yeah,
overall.
it really will. So good stuff, Patty. Thanks for that one. Appreciate it.
Sure.